The topic today is how to improve your control over the sales process. And so what you can gain from this time that we're going to spend here today together is likely you should be able to improve the number of leads you generate, improve the quality of leads that you generate, and improve the clarity of the steps that you take those leads through, and that's going to lead to becoming a better closer. Some reasons why you might want to spend your time with us here today, and maybe you know that because you registered and you're watching this, is it can be common for you to have deals that either kind of sputter out, they stall out, you end up in the circle where you're following up with sales prospects that you quoted or gave a proposal to, and you don't really know where you stand, you don't really know what direction to go to. It seems like deals aren't closing. So those are some of the pain points that you may have and that we would help to fix here today. So I just want to start out by talking about that. Let's just level set that all of us have an ultimate goal of closing the sale. To close the sale, to get a new client, to generate business, to make commissions. All of us collectively share that common goal, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're watching this, you likely could probably relate to the fact that you probably think about that goal every day. Whether you're a business owner or a salesperson, what am I going to do to get more sales or increase sales or to close this particular prospect that I'm talking to? But what I want to point out is that while that's always the ultimate goal standing in front of us, we also all at any particular time also have an immediate goal in front of us when we're specifically working with or pursuing a prospect, and that is to move the prospect to the next stage of your sales process. So I really don't care what you sell and how complex or how simple it is or how long or how short your sales process is. There are steps that you will take a prospect through. Those steps could take as little as 10 minutes to go through. It could take as much as 2 years, but there are steps. And so your immediate goal is to take that prospect to the next step. One of the problems that we can fall into is that we can focus primarily on the ultimate goal. We're so wrapped up in trying to close the sale and trying to get business that we basically put the pedal to the metal, figuratively speaking, in terms of car terminology, and floor it, and are always just focused on sell, 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 and always be closing. Now, the problem with that, and kind of staying with the car metaphor, and bear with me on this metaphor, I'm not actually a race car fan, and I don't know a lot about the sport. If you think about a car race, that they're going to drive around the track for 100 laps, 500 laps, whatever it is, they do not basically, when the race begins, they don't just floor it and drive the car as fast as it'll go until something gets in their way, and then slow down. And if nothing's in their way, they're driving as fast as they can, and just doing that until they win the race. The reality is that they know how long the race is, and usually there are scheduled pit stops. So you could think of that as a process and checkpoints. And they typically sort of control how fast they control how fast they go and limit their speed according to how long they have to go, and they manage the car and the speed and the fuel and the tires according to their schedule of pit stops. And the sales process should be the same thing. You should know the stages that you need to take a prospect through, and having that clarity will improve your ability to not only finish the race but to win the race. Bringing that metaphor back to the world of sales, I want to really focus on that challenge of basically driving your sales process with the gas on the pedal all the way, which bringing that back to sales would be where you're always, every time you talk to a prospect, you're focused on that ultimate goal of selling. Now, you may be hearing me say that and think, I don't always just try to close the prospect, and I'm not only thinking about closing. But it's that you get so wrapped up in that goal that even subconsciously it impacts what you say and do. And that's aligning with that metaphor of the foot is on the gas and it's all the way down. And I want you to lift that foot up a little bit and find your cruising pace and identify the stages that you need to stop at. So let me give you some examples of how a salesperson might subconsciously or maybe consciously drive full speed focused on the ultimate goal of trying to close the sale when they shouldn't. Let's look at cold calling, for example. A person may cold call and get a prospect on the phone, and the prospect is actually not hanging up on them, and so that salesperson tries to just get as much time and continue talking to that prospect as long as they can. And so we're going to talk here in a minute, but a cold call should only be 2 to 5 minutes. And with the floor to the metal and the pedal to the metal, the salesperson could end up on a call where it's going 10 minutes. And what has happened here is that they've focused on trying to build interest to a level where the prospect might want to purchase. But the cold call isn't a place to sell the product. There's not enough time, and I'll explain that here in a minute. The goal of the cold call should be to move to the next stage of the sales process. So that's an example of a salesperson not really focused on the immediate goal of the sales next stage, and more focused on, let me just get as much as I can out of this cold call and try to drive towards closing the sale, even knowing if they know the close isn't going to happen at that particular time. Now what can happen here is that the call goes on too long, you end up damaging rapport, you end up at the end of that 10 minutes in a very unorganized way. You don't really know where to go next because you've really gone beyond the cold call, and so you just end up with a lack of clarity and a lack of control. And let me give you another example. So you may go to a networking event, and there's all sorts of different potential prospects at a networking event, and you end up in a conversation with someone and they ask a couple good questions, and the next thing you know, you've talked to that person for 20 minutes. And you were talking about your product and your service, and you were trying to pitch this person, and they basically didn't want to stand alone at the networking event, so they acted like they were interested, and you thought you had a prospect, and it ends up going nowhere. And what you ended up missing out on was 20 minutes of meeting other people. So if you understand your sales process should have ended with talking to that person for 5-10 minutes, and maybe you transition that person into your sales process, which might be talking again on another day, then you can move on to meet other prospects. But you ended up wasting time, and it was because of that mindset of, I'm going to try to close, I'm trying to focus on my ultimate goal of closing. Let me give you another example. Whether you're on a prospecting call or talking to someone at a networking event, let's say you're at the very first stage of your sales process, which might be the first time you're speaking with someone, and they give you an objection like, yeah, I'm not really interested. Well, your natural response is to try to overcome that objection to change that person from I'm not interested to change them to be I'm kind of interested. That's your natural response. And so when they say I'm not interested, you might go, oh, you might start talking about your product and how it's better and whatnot, and you're trying to change their mind. Well, stop to think about what that action and that direction you're trying to do is, what it's aligned with. It's more aligned with your ultimate goal of trying to close the sale. Even knowing if you're not going to try to put a contract in front of that prospect, you're still talking and communicating in a way that is aligned with your ultimate goal. Your immediate goal is to get the prospect to the next stage of your sales process. And if you really focus on that, you're going to end up saying something completely different. Let me give you an example. So they say, I'm not interested. Hey, you know what? I understand, and I don't know why you would be interested because we've only chatted for a couple minutes and you don't even know anything about what we do. Hey, listen, I tell you what, I'm not trying to sign you up. I just wanted to basically kind of establish the line of communication between our company. If I could ask you real quick, who are you guys using for blank, and insert something, what your product does. And so what I just did there was I try to keep the conversation going because my goal is to move that prospect to the next stage, which might be as simple as having a conversation. The one last example I want to give you of why of how a salesperson can just operate with that mindset of the ultimate goal in mind and how that can impact you is that you end up trying to sell to everybody because you're focused on the ultimate goal of closing. So every potential prospect I see, I'm going to try to basically, like I said, you're not sticking a quote or a contract in front of people with a pen, but you're communicating in a way where you're going to try to sell the product. And let me give you an example. So there's a lot of people that will call and schedule appointments with prospects without knowing anything about them, and they'll go out and they'll pitch their product. What that leads to, that's a mindset of trying to close. What that can lead to is a lot of wasted time. When you operate with that mindset of always trying to focus on your ultimate goal, you can end up trying to sell to everybody, and that leads to wasted time and bad meetings and bad conversations and bad rapport. So those are some examples what we're going to try to help with here today, and we're going to basically just go through these three sections. We're going to talk about some sales process steps that you can go through. We're going to talk a little bit about closing and just a tad about sales follow-up. What we want to do is we want to bring clarity to you as to the steps that you should take a prospect through during your sales process. I mean, if we want to improve our control over the sales process, then we need to know what stages we want to go through. It's just like that race car driver. They need to know what pit stops are scheduled and around what lap number they need to happen and what's going to happen in each pit stop. If a driver didn't have that clarity, how are they going to manage the vehicle in the race, right? They're just going to drive until they're almost out of gas and then pit stop. I'm not a race expert, but I know that they don't do that. This is our effort to give you more clarity in the area of the race that you want to basically run. Now, I have some very common sales process stages listed out here. I'm going to go through them one at a time. Yours may be slightly different. I'm going to show you some variations of this, and I'm fairly confident that regardless of what you sell, we're going to present a process here that should be close to one that you could go through for your product. And we only really highlight the first three steps because when you get beyond either these three steps or one of the three steps that you pick, it's common for the process to take a lot of different shapes, either for each prospect that you deal with, or from salesperson to salesperson, or even from product to product, meaning you could sell 5 different products and each of those products kind of have a different sales process. But let's go through these. These are very common and you should be able to relate to them. But the very first step in most sales processes is an initial contact. So that could be a cold call, it could be an email, it could be an inbound call. You went to my website and you called me. Now it's important to know that this initial contact, if you're talking to someone, you might end up talking to them for more than 2 to 5 minutes. But this stage of the sales process only is 2 to 5 minutes long. And what I want you to do, I want you to focus 80% of the attention on the prospect at this time and 20% on you. If you go to a networking event, you'll notice that the good networkers will focus asking questions about you. The very average common networkers will sit there and talk about themselves. And you can almost also think of that as when you go out and meet people, when you meet someone for lunch, whether it's a friend or someone you've just met, someone that's very conscious of building relationships is going to focus more of the attention on you. So this isn't necessarily your natural instinct. Your natural instinct is to talk more about you and what you're interested in. I want you to flip that. I want you to focus 80% on the prospect, 20% on you. Now what we're going to try to accomplish in this meeting is we're going to try to pre-qualify the prospect, and I'm going to dig into that. That's a very important goal, and I'm just going to come back to that after we go through these stages to explain what I want you to do there. But when you pre-qualify, you're going to gain some information, and I want you to build some interest in the prospect. Now, going back to those two goals of the ultimate goal, selling the product, and the immediate goal of moving to the next stage, that comes into play here when we talk about building interest. Now, if we're trying to build interest on the prospect side for what we sell, now we're dipping into the 20% on you, which logically it could make sense to do that at the end of this initial contact, right before you go for the close. So right before I close you on the next step, I'm going to try to build a little interest. Now, notice I said build a little interest because I don't need to build enough interest for my ultimate goal of selling the product. I need to build enough interest to get you to agree to move to the next stage, which is a lower bar. And notice when I said close you for the next step, so I mentioned always be closing earlier. I do agree with the ABC, the always be closing. You should always be closing your prospect, but it's not always be closing your prospect for the sale. It's always be closing your prospect for the next step in your sales process. If we move to the next stage is an appointment. And I label this an appointment. For many salespeople, the label of appointment works. Depending on the type of business you're in, it might be just a conversation. It might not necessarily be a formal appointment, but just consider this a step, and you could label it whatever makes sense for you. But this could be a phone call. It could be meeting someone face to face. This could take the shape of a 20 to 30 minute meeting. Now we want to begin to shift the bar, and it can be a little bit more balanced, where it's 50% of the attention on the prospect and 50% on you. It could possibly be in that order too, I think is ideal. Let's get back together, and I'm going to try to make it to where we're talking about you in the first half of the meeting, and then the second half of the meeting I can talk about me. Now, the goals for this meeting, we also are going to pre-qualify, and that's going to continue, and I'm going to explain why that continues when we get back to that. But we're also going to hard qualify, which is we're going to ask some deeper, harder questions, and I'll show you that. And we're going to gather more information. We're going to build interest to a higher level, enough to move to the next stage, and we're going to close the prospect on moving to the presentation stage, which is stage 3. Now, so presentation means I'm going to present to you whatever, right? I'm going to present to you the product I sell. This could be basically a formal presentation. It could be a demonstration. But I do want to point out, you may think to yourself, when you hear that, you might say, well, we don't really have anything to present. It's a pretty simple product. The presentation could just be the delivery of the quote, delivery of the proposal. It could be as simple as, let's say you sell something as simple as termite treatment, and so you're on site, you inspect a property, and then you're gonna go through an estimate of how much it would cost to treat the property. That exercise of going through the quote and the estimate is your presentation. A lot of prospects will go through stages like this, and then before they get to the presentation stage, they'll send out a quote. Well, you can turn that quote or that proposal into an actual meeting and say, let's get together. I want to go through I want to go through the proposal and explain it to you. So you can turn it into a meeting, or just the fact that you emailed it is that actual step. But that's the third step. Now, so you may look at that and go, well, my world's a little different, so let me show you some other options here. Now, one thing that you could run into, and you could either do this on purpose or on accident, is what we call the instant appointment, which is where you basically, instead of talking to someone on the phone or at an event or whatever for 2 to 5 minutes, you end up talking for 20 minutes. And the accidental instant appointment is what I kind of explained in the earlier part of the meeting, this webinar, where I said you end up cold calling someone and they ask a few questions, and next thing you know, you've talked to them for 20 minutes. That's sort of the accidental instant appointment. Basically, in my opinion, you've exceeded the cold call and you've actually started to have an appointment right there at the same time. But you should, what I would recommend you do is, if that happens to you regularly and you like that, then you should still know that you're going from one stage to the other, and you still have these different things to accomplish, and you should still know where you are. Now, that you could do an instant appointment on purpose, which is you sell something very simple, and that appointment's going to be a very short meeting, and you just want to get it all done while you're on the phone with the prospect at the same time, and you do it on purpose. If that's the case, no problems here. Whatever works best for you. Now, I will tell you, for a lot of business-to-business sales, I personally believe that it makes good sense to split the initial contact from the appointment, because you're going to get more time with the prospect if you, instead of having a 20-minute cold call and appointment over the phone, where the prospect wasn't really prepared for your meeting, I personally think you'll get more time and attention, and they'll be more prepared, you'll be more prepared. If instead you have a 5-minute cold call and then a 20 to 30-minute appointment on the calendar on another day. Now, again, you might not want to do that if they're a very difficult person to get a hold of, if you think they're going to flake. But if you have confidence in who you are and in your process, I think that works best. Now, you can fall into a trap where you're on a cold call and a prospect asks good questions, and the next thing you know, you get so excited that someone's asking you questions that you answer their questions, and you just sort of miss the opportunity. Well, what I will say is you missed an opportunity, a great opportunity, which is if they're asking good questions, that's a great opportunity for you to go for the appointment. And you can say something like this: hey, you know what, you're asking really good questions, and I want to dig into that in more detail, and here I am, I've called you out of the blue, and to answer your question, it's going to take a little bit of explanation. So let me just check with you. Do you have another 20 minutes to go through all of this now? Or what do you think about putting some time on the calendar to where I'll send you a GoToMeeting link, and we can meet, and I can show you some slides, or I can come out to your office, and so then you schedule the meeting. So you do that before answering their questions. One thing you're doing there is you're saving the answers to the questions as like a carrot for them to agree to a meeting. And again, I think there's a lot of benefits to that. But if you go ahead and you answer their questions and then you try to schedule the appointment, I think your leverage and the opportunity there is a bit missed. So just keep that in mind. I want to show you some other alternative ways to kind of piece these boxes together. You could do what we call the instant presentation, which is you basically present at the same time as your appointment. And this could happen either on purpose or on accident. On accident is you go out to meet with the prospect, and let's say you have your laptop with you, and they want to see a demo right there, and you whip out your laptop and you're showing them a demo, and so it turned into basically an instant presentation. You may do this on purpose where you go out on site or whatever for the appointment, and it's not necessarily an accident. It's that you're going to ask them some questions, and based on how it goes, you're going to then progress into your presentation. So that might fit well with the product you sell. Me personally, I have had a salesperson come out to present to me where they did this, but they skipped the appointment. So there was the initial contact to set the appointment with me. They came out to my office and they just handed me a binder and flew right into their presentation. I don't think that worked well at all because they didn't know anything about me, and it was really bad flow. So try to avoid that. But starting out with the appointment where you're learning about them and then transitioning to your presentation after that, if you do it right, it's not bad. Now, you may be in a business where you sell a one-call close, and if you are, then you might have been thinking this whole time, what this doesn't really work for me because I have a one-call close. Actually, probably if you have a one-call close product, you probably might not have wanted to attend this session because you don't think you have a sales process. But as I said, even if your sales process is 10 minutes, you still have stages, and this is what it looks like. You still have 2 to 5 minutes, and then after that, on that call, you have your presentation. And I personally still think you should close for that presentation. There should still be some sort of, I want to show you something. It'll take 5 minutes, and I can send you a link, or we could do it right now, and before you do your presentation, even if it's just a 5-minute presentation, you're still closing for that. So this is the one-call close structure, and you'll notice the appointment still could happen afterwards. So it's sort of like an alternate. Like if you have a one-call close, but you can't close the prospect on the one call, then maybe you fall back to say, okay, well, I kind of went through everything really quickly there. You have some reservations. Why don't we schedule some time to go through that in more detail? So that's sort of why there's an appointment after the presentation. Here's sort of a webinar / event path, and believe it or not, this is what you're on right now with this session here today. There was an initial contact that went out to you, and that was an email invitation to attend an event. That was the initial contact. We didn't speak or anything, but I communicated my message to you through an email. You agreed to register. Now here you are at that second stage, which is presentation. So I'm presenting to you a webinar. The next step in this process might be an appointment. The close for the appointment, if you have a public webinar with a lot of people, you can't really close for the appointment at that second step. So there might be a mini step between boxes 2 and 3 where you're calling someone or emailing them. You might somehow have a way for them to sign up for an appointment, but then so you're just sort of rearranging the order here, but it makes sense to where then you could end up in an appointment with someone that attended your webinar, and you can ask them, hey, what'd you think of the event? Did you get anything out of it? I wanted to know what motivated you to spend your time with us. What are you looking to improve? And so you can basically go through your appointment in that format. So I want to go back to the subject of qualifying, because I told you in the first 2 stages you're going to qualify in like the initial contact, and I want to show you what that looks like. So a lot of salespeople don't probably ask enough questions. We personally here at SalesScripter, we believe the best salesperson asks the best questions. So if you want to get better and if you want to be the best salesperson, then one way to do that is to look and see if you're asking good questions or the right questions. So I think a lot of salespeople in that initial contact, they end up sort of just talking a lot about their product, which is a common approach for salespeople, and they don't ask enough questions or any questions. So what we want you to do is we want you to ask pre-qualifying questions, and we call them pre-qualifying questions because they are initial light qualifying questions to determine if it makes sense to go to the next stage of the sales process. Now you'll also notice when I talked about when we focus on the ultimate goal of trying to close the sale, we try to sell to everybody. But you shouldn't try to sell to everybody. You shouldn't try to schedule an appointment with every prospect that will agree to meet with you. You should schedule appointments with prospects that are worth you spending your valuable time. And so the best way to determine if someone's worth your time is to ask some pre-qualifying questions in your initial contact. So here's actually a script that's produced by SalesScripter, and this is actually one of my sales pitches that are loaded up into my SalesScripter account, where that's designed for talking to salespeople. See, when I talk to salespeople and I talk to sales managers, those are 2 totally different sales pitches. So I actually have different pre-qualifying questions for salespeople compared to pre-qualifying questions for sales managers. But anyways, so here are my questions. Now I just do want to point out in the initial contact, I have 8 questions here. I'm not going to ask my prospect 8 questions in the initial contact. I only have 2 to 5 minutes to work with. I'm going to ask them 1 or 2 or 3 of these, or maybe just 1 if I get a great answer to that 1 question, and then I'm going to move on and try to close. So here are my pre-qualifying questions. Again, that's produced by SalesScripter. So if you asking those questions improves your control over the sales process, because that's really what we're here to talk about. And it does that. They do that for a couple reasons. One is they're going to help you to find a reason for the prospect to go to the next stage. Not only do they find a reason for you to determine if you should spend time with them, that same reason is a justification for the prospect to spend their time with you. So it gives you ammunition to control the sales process right there, and it gives you clarity to which prospects you want to move to the next stage of the sales process. If you attended this webinar because you have these deals at Flake, you might think, well, I need a better sales process. Part of the problem might be that you're getting the wrong deals into your sales process. It's sort of like someone who has relationship problems and they think that I need to find a way to be better at relationships because they have all these issues with the people that they date. When the reality is that they're just dating really bad quality people. And it's not them, it's that they're not dating good people. So they could not change anything about themselves other than the people that they choose to surround themselves with, and right away they're going to be better at relationships. So you want to be better at the sales process. Well, let's get better about the prospects that we let into our sales process. And one of the ways to do that is by pre-qualifying them. You might ask a few of your pre-qualifying questions and realize this person doesn't fit. So you get them out of the way, and then you move on. All right, so how do you figure out your pre-qualifying questions? You can go through these key steps, figure out, and they're listed here, and SalesScripter will take you through a process of building the optimum list of pre-qualifying questions for the products you sell and the different buyers that you sell to. Moving on to step 3, you'll notice that the pre-qualify continues, and when you get to your appointment, the reason why is because remember I showed you I had 8 pre-qualifying questions, and again, here's a first appointment script that's produced by SalesScripter, or just a shameless plug here. So here's just a list of some of the questions I should be asking when I go on an appointment. Now, you'll notice I'm only going to ask 1 or 2 or 3 of those questions before I get to the appointment. So I have a bunch of pre-qualifying questions left over, and that gives me a great thing to talk about in the appointment. Again, improving my ability to control and improve my sales process. So one thing that we want to get to in that appointment is we want to begin to hard qualify the prospect. So this is where we can ask questions that determine whether they have more of a need or a want, if they have money to spend, if they're the true decision maker, what type of competitors are we competing with, are we in the front, are we coming in at the 11th hour. So the appointment is the place to ask these questions. This is a great list of questions. These questions are in SalesScripter. Now, I bet most salespeople don't consistently ask these questions. If you want to improve your control over sales processes, ask these questions, because again, these will eliminate you chasing leads that aren't real. These will help you for the leads that are real. These will help you to identify why they're real and to know why they're real and to put that information in front of the prospect's mind so that you can control that process better. So that is the sales process steps. Now let's talk about closing, because we talked about always be closing and always be closing for the next step in the sales process. So the key thing, one of the most important things to remember right now is when you're closing, close for the right goal. We talked about that you have 2 different goals. The ultimate goal is to close the sale. The immediate goal is to close the next step in your process. So always focus on setting that appointment, scheduling the presentation, agreeing to get to review a proposal or the reason to put together a proposal. Now, a lot of salespeople will say, if I could improve one thing about myself, I would like to be a better closer. I personally believe that closing should be the easiest step in the sales process, and the reason why is because of all these indirect closing tactics. These are things that you should be doing that actually aren't really, the activity of closing a prospect. But if you effectively communicate the value that you offer, the benefits that you offer, if you build a business case, communicate the ROI that you can deliver, communicate when the prospect will be paid back for what they spend with you, find pain that your prospect's having that you can help to resolve, qualify the prospect, build rapport, build interest, build credibility. If you do all those things, then you just pretty much can ask to either move to the next stage or ask for the business, and it's just really natural and easy. But those are not really closing tactics. Those are just doing all the other things right, and then closing just kind of happens. But there are some things you can do to really directly as part of your effort to close. And one of the things is, and we're talking about the sales process again, so trial closing is sort of a test close. This is asking the prospect, hey, are we going in the right direction? What do you think about what we've discussed so far? Is this something you could see your guys using? Is this what you were expecting to see? So you're basically checking in to see how the prospect feels and what they're thinking. It's not necessarily saying, are you ready to move forward? It's saying, what do you think here? And so while the answer to these questions is not typically yes, I'm ready to purchase, the answer tells you whether or not you're going in the right direction. So instead of trying to force a prospect through a process that they don't want to go through, or that doesn't align with the direction they want to go, or you think they need it and they love it, and they might love it but they don't need it, or they don't really love it and you don't even know it, instead of forcing those things along, you can ask the prospect, and you can trial close the prospect every conversation you have with the prospect. I mean, you don't have to repeat these same questions every time you talk with them, but you can ask questions to feel out, hey, are we still on track? I mean, you could ask the are we still on track almost every time you speak with a prospect, and you might want to word it a different way so you don't sound like a robot, but trial closing will greatly improve your conversations and your sales process. A soft closing tactic is to let the prospect lead. So instead of saying, here's the deal, are you ready to move forward, like with a hard firm close, soft closing is saying, hey, what do you want to do next? I've presented your options to you. You can either do this, you can do that, and you can do this, and which direction would you like to go in? So it's letting the prospect lead and letting the prospect choose, and getting them to verbalize and communicate what direction to go. You could be a little bit more firm here. Some hard closing questions. Again, these are all inside of Sales Scripture if you have an account with that. But and due to time, I'm not going to kind of go through these. And we also have a training module on closing, how to immediately become a better closer, that goes through all this in more detail. But use a partnership plan, which is basically sort of a schedule of, if let's say you're presenting to a prospect and you're showing them some slides, you could have a slide like this at the end that says, and you either soft close or you hard close, but whatever, you agree, hey, let me show you what moving forward looks like. Are you interested enough to continue discussions and move forward to the next step? If they say yes or whatever, you can present this. So this is saying, if we continued between today and actual purchasing the product or setting up the system or implementation, these are the main steps that I've assumed that we would go through together. And I've put some dates here, and I've put some owners of each step and the status. Are these stages, and you can confirm with the prospect if they agree with these stages. So this is basically, the rest of the sales process that is unique to that prospect. And so this is basically taking away the ambiguity of the sales process from both yourself and from the prospect. If we agree to move forward towards a partnership, these are the steps we're going to go through. And you can work with the prospect right there in the meeting and open up the presentation and make any changes. Say, hey, is there something I missed here? Are these dates realistic? Do you agree to go through this path? And at any time we can agree to end this process, but do you agree with our intentions today to go through this process together until one of us communicates to stop? And then you can get the verbal agreement. You're not getting a signature, you're getting a verbal agreement and moving forward through the steps that you have to go through. Now, that's a format that I just showed you there of presenting it in a slide, where you might have it up on a projector on a wall. Now, you could convert that same document to a Word or document format and basically have that as a last page in your proposal that you send over to your prospect, and you can update this document with the new dates and any changes or additions or status changes, and so it can be a living, breathing document. Now, that document can help you with following up with the prospect, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But a compelling event, so we're talking here about closing the prospect. Now, I showed you some hard qualifying questions that determine a need versus a want, and in those questions there are some questions to try to figure out, is there an event that is driving the prospect from needing what you sell? For example, if I'm talking to someone about buying a tuxedo, is there an event that you need this for? Yes, I'm getting married. And when is the wedding date? Okay, well, now we know that that's a compelling event. This person needs to have a tuxedo by this particular date. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So that's a compelling event. once we know that event, we can use that as we try to control the sales process, because a prospect will tend to fall behind schedule or delay a meeting or whatnot. So every time they do, you can mention the compelling event to get basically kind of whip that prospect back in shape. Now, you might not, there's naturally compelling events like something happening, a contract expiring. Now, you might ask the prospect some questions and find out that there's not really a compelling event. I mean, they'd like to have it sooner is better than later, but there's no date. You can manufacture a compelling event with a discount or a promotion or whatnot. You can do a takeaway as a way to try to improve your control over the sales process. Let's say if a prospect, what can often happen is a prospect can go on the fence during your sales process. They can become idle, and you begin to wait around and you continue to follow up endlessly, waiting for the prospect to get off the fence. Well, at some point you can do a takeaway. So let's say a prospect's been silent or non-committal. Of course you want to sell them. Of course your ultimate goal is to close the sale, right? As I talked about, we can't forget that as much as we sometimes want to. But sometimes you can do a takeaway. So you can say, I don't know, you seem a little apprehensive about this purchase. You've expressed wanting to do it, but you're scared and you just don't know if it's right. So I don't know, maybe it's not the right fit. I mean, if you're that nervous and uncertain, maybe this isn't the right fit, right direction for you at this time. So you're doing a takeaway. And at that point, the prospect could either challenge your takeaway to say, no, I'm not that uncertain. I'm just waiting for this one thing to happen. And they try to sell you on why to stay involved. Or they might confirm your takeaway and say, yeah, you're probably right. So it's a fairly advanced tactic. We have a training module that spends 30-40 minutes on this tactic alone. So I'd encourage you to watch that before you use this. But this is a way for you to improve your control over sales processes. So that's kind of those are closing tactics. Sales follow-up is pretty simple, which, by the way, again, closing is a very common thing for salespeople that that go to into sales coaching want help with. Another thing is they want help with how to follow up with prospects. They talk about sending out proposals or what meeting prospects go cold, and they just end up in this circle, this endless loop of following up with prospects, and they don't either know how to get out of it or when to get out of it or when to, how to get the prospect re-involved. So I think it's real simple. If you've done all the other things that I've talked about, and one very important step in that closing that I talked about, which is sort of letting the prospect lead. So at some point, if you get clarity as to what direction the prospect would like to go, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with them buying the product. What do you want to do next? When do you want me to follow up with you? When do you want to meet again? If you have that crystal clarity as to what is next, then you never have any ambiguity as to should I follow up with the prospect. You should always have clarity as to this is what I'm going to do next. They said, call me back in 3 months. I'm going to call them back in 3 months. I'm not going to call them back in 2 months. I'm not going to call them back in 4 months. I'm going to call them back in 3 months. So there's no confusion. You know exactly what to do. Now, it's when the prospect blows you off or stops responding that you just don't know, what to do. So you always want to try to have that clarity of what the prospect wants to do next. And even if they say call me back in 3 months and you call them back and you don't get a hold of them, you can still continue to follow up with them based on that last instruction. It's not until they respond with different instructions of don't ever call me again, or let's change the 3 months to 9 months, So just you want to get that clarity as to what are we doing next. And then now what you might want to do is you might want to reconcile the timing that they give you with your compelling event. They might say, hey, let's move our meeting out 3 months, and you might say, well, fair enough, but you said you want to have your system up and running by the end of the year. If we meet in 3 months, that's going to give us a very short amount of time to continue the rest of the process. So I understand that you're not available to meet today, but I would recommend we meet sometime in the next 3 weeks in order to maintain your requirement of being online by the end of the year. And then the rest of this is just scheduling your reminders so you follow up. A key thing with follow up is using drip campaigns, email drip campaigns to follow up and to stay fresh in the prospect's mind. You know, a lot of times when the prospect says no, it's more no, not right now versus no, never. So you want to being able to like call the prospect or meet with the prospect at the exact time that it's a yes, the time could be right. It can be challenging. So you want to basically use email drip marketing to continue to send emails and stay fresh in the prospect's mind so that they think of you when that no, not right now becomes a well, maybe now is right. So that's pretty much it. That's the sales follow-up. Just want to share a little information about how we can help you if you liked that and you want more help. So what you've seen here today is actually part of what we call the SMART sales system. And so SMART actually stands for sales messaging. So by the way, we provide a sales training and sales prospecting methodology. There's a lot of other companies out there, but the majority of the programs and solutions out there do not really focus on sales messaging. They touch it a little bit here and there, but we're all about sales messaging. We want you to improve sales by knowing what to say and ask. And the ask is the important thing there. We're going to help you to ask the right questions. And we think it's all about asking the right questions. Not only does that help you to gather key information, to qualify prospects and to build business cases, but also helps you to make a great impression. So our solution is all about sales messaging, and we also have the R for response here. Like, how are you going to respond? So we're not just going to teach you what questions to ask and what script to use. We're going to teach you how to respond to objections or how to respond to questions. And I felt like this was an important thing to focus on a year or two ago when a client of mine, he sold a software product, and I helped him to build an awesome list of pre-qualifying questions. And he came back to me later saying that the questions don't really help. And we kind of role played, and the reality was that he did not know how to respond to the prospect's response to his questions. So it's not just asking the right questions, it's that for every question you ask, the prospect's going to give you an answer. Well, what do you do? How do you respond to their answer? So we also give you logic for how to respond to answers to questions, how to respond to objections, and it's all about tactics. You know, I think that there's a lot of sales training programs out there that have a lot of strategy or a lot of philosophical things of what you should do, or they try to motivate you that you have everything that it takes. I like training I like training programs that lay it out exactly crystal clear. This is what you need to do, and this is what you not need to avoid doing. So some people see tactics as a bad word. We're all about tactics. We're going to make it crystal clear what you need to do to be successful. Now you can access this SMART sales methodology through our YouTube channel. We actually have a playlist. It's called Smart Sales Training Program, Sales System Training Program, and there's about 20 videos on there, and this video might go up there. And you can also access this methodology through ebooks. By the way, our ebooks and our YouTube channel are all free. There is one book that's on Amazon that's not free, and I'd actually recommend you buy the book because you can order it in a softback format and have it on your desk, and it's written to be designed to be a reference manual. So there's a chapter on closing, there's a chapter on objections, there's a chapter on qualifying, so you can flag the chapter that you need to work on and get to the answer that you need maybe right there when you're making calls. So I prefer like physical books over ebooks, but the ebooks are free if you want to check those out. And then we also deliver our methodology through sales training, so you can watch our recorded training videos for free. You can schedule live sales training virtually or live sales training in person, and our training we can actually customize to your pitch. So when we're talking about questions, like if we're building this out for your salespeople. When we're talking about pain, we can talk about the pain that you help to fix, your products, your value points, your questions. So a lot of the methodology we give away for free because our business model is to get you or your salespeople using our software platform. We don't hide that. That is how we want to help you. And because if you like the methodology, if you watch all of our videos, if you want to utilize all those tactics, you should check out our software application because it helps you to set all that up. It provides you with the scripts, helps you to build your pitch, the library of tools, CRM functionality, and whatnot. And then the last sort of leg of the three-legged stool here is professional services. So we can certainly provide sales consulting where we'll help you to build your pitch, help you to build your sales process out, look at your existing scripts, we help companies in a number of ways improving sales. The difference between sales consulting and sales coaching here is just more so we provide sales consulting more towards sales leaders or businesses or sales managers, and the sales coaching typically is rolled out one-on-one to frontline salespeople, and we can work through all the different stuff that topics of prospecting and get together either weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, bi-weekly, whatever makes sense. So that's pretty much it. And here's my info. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or reach me directly or connect with me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. And